Hello everyone, you are listening to Scenecraft. From opening shots to long takes and epilogues, we examine our favorite scenes from cinema here on the podcast. I'm Cody, here with my fellow members of the Free Press,
Mark,
and Connor.
You can find Scenecraft on most social media platforms at Scenecraft Podcast for the latest news on the show. Today we will be discussing the recently released Civil War, directed by Alex Garland. But as usual, let's begin with our brief What We've Been Watching segment, Quick Takes.
Speak quickly.
Quickly, thank you.
Quickly, come on. Hurry up, quicker.
Way quicker.
Okay, I'll say it fast.
Guys, it's been a while. What have you been watching recently?
Okay, I will start us off with The Abyss, which was directed by James Cameron in 1989. And the logline reads, "A civilian diving team is enlisted to search for a lost submarine and faces danger while encountering an alien aquatic species." So this by no means is a new movie, but Cameron has been teasing a 4K remaster re-release for over a decade now, and it finally dropped this past March. So, like anything that Cameron does, he puts everything into it, and the transfer of this film is absolutely gorgeous. It could potentially pass as being released in maybe the last 5 to 10 years. But this one intrigued me because I remember watching bits of this on HBO when I was way too young to comprehend what was going on. And I never got to watch it start to finish as an adult, and I found it hard to find on streaming apps up until now. This movie drops you into things almost immediately, and I could feel my cortisol levels beginning to peak soon after pressing play. And everything is so well presented, and the story never really gets in the way of itself, which is a quality I really appreciate from James Cameron as a director. The on-screen peril is palpable in this one, and for good reason, because the production was notably treacherous for the cast and crew. Ed Harris, in particular, refuses to discuss his time making this movie because it was so traumatic for him, and he nearly drowned at one point in the production of this movie. So,
wow,
kind of crazy to read about. But all that being said, Cameron's ambition once again compels him to put stuff on screen that most people would deem unfilmable. And The Abyss is no exception. My wife and I had a great time watching this one. The ending goes to some sentimental places I wasn't necessarily expecting, but I was okay with it. Whether you haven't seen this film or you haven't seen it in several years, I'd strongly encourage you to check out the 4K restoration of The Abyss, which is now available for streaming on a lot of providers. I watched it on Hulu, so you could definitely check it out there.
Awesome, Mark. Yeah, I've been really looking forward to catching this because I haven't even seen the film. I know that that's like a cardinal sin at this point. Really looking forward to seeing the 4K version, which I know has been kind of up for debate in terms of like level of sharpness and how much they restored and what they did with it. So
I think that only really applies for those who saw it in its original format.
Okay.
I think if you've never seen it before, you won't think twice about it. But it's weird because James Cameron, his filmography seems like it's pretty big, but outside of Avatar, he only has, a handful of movies. But this movie features, like I said, these unfilmable moments. There's a science experiment that I'm not going to ruin or anything, but you'll know when you get to it. And you'll read all about it once you're done. It's insane.
I'm excited to watch this one again. So I'm like you, Mark. I grew up watching it. I was maybe in like middle school or something, because it's like PG-13, right? Like it's a little edgy, sort of, but it's not R.
Yeah, there's some brutal things that they show in it.
I remember you saying this is some of the best IMDb trivia you've ever read too,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to watching and then reading about it.
I also had a chance to watch the movie Suncoast, which was directed by Laura Chin in 2024. The logline reads, "While caring for her brother, along with her audacious mother, a teenager strikes up a friendship with an eccentric activist who is protesting one of the most landmark medical cases of all time." So this is the feature directorial debut for Laura Chin, and it's loosely based off of her own life. And as you both know, I'm a sucker for coming of age stories, and I had heard that this was getting a bit of buzz at this year's Sundance Festival. It also stars Woody Harrelson, Laura Linney, and Nico Parker. And so that's all I really needed to give this one a shot. And on paper, the plot is pretty depressing as it centralizes on a teenager named Doris who's forced to care for her brother, who's left basically medically unresponsive due to an aggressive form of brain cancer.
Oh.
So pretty morbid, but the kind of the main tension of the movie is she's forced to grow up pretty quickly, but she also wants to be a normal high school teenager.
Got it.
And this movie takes place in 2005, which coincides with the height of the Terry Schiavo case, which is referenced in that logline. And for those who are unfamiliar with the case, it deals with the morality and legality of a person's end-of-life wishes when they're in a vegetative state. And so I think it kind of adds a thematic weight to the movie, and I found it pretty effective. The movie bites off a little bit more than it can chew, with having to juggle 3 character storylines that sometimes compete with each other. But overall, I enjoyed this one, and I think Nico Parker, who I first saw from the pilot episode of HBO's The Last of Us, is spectacular in this movie, and I think she has a really promising career ahead of her. So I would recommend checking out Suncoast, which is now streaming on Hulu.
Nice. Never even heard of this.
Very cool.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of went under the radar, but if you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, it's worth a watch.
Wasn't there like an early 2000s like strip mall store called Suncoast?
Yes.
Yeah,
that sounds
Suncoast,
familiar.
Sam Goody.
Uh-huh.
They were both kind of like mall
Throwback.
multimedia.
Okay.
It plays into the time period, I guess, of the movie.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Connor? What have you been watching recently?
So I recently rewatched Ex Machina, directed by Alex Garland, from 2014. The logline reads, a young programmer is selected to participate in a groundbreaking experiment in synthetic intelligence by evaluating the human qualities of a highly advanced humanoid AI. So about a month ago, you guys might remember, A24 announced a few movies would be coming back for a one-night-only screening in IMAX, and they started with Ex Machina.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife and I went out to the theater to see this, and it actually started with a little message from Alex Garland and a sneak preview of Civil War, which turned out to be the first 7 minutes of the movie.
Oh, cool.
So that was very cool. It felt like really good research for today's episode by revisiting Garland's directorial debut. And for anyone unfamiliar, it was one of A24's first big hits, and it's actually still one of their top 10 highest grossing films in the US. I know this is a favorite of both of yours, and Mark, I think it's even in your top 4 on Letterboxd, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
I remember watching it for the first time back around the time it came out because you guys had recommended it, but unfortunately there's no record of it because it must have been before I started using Letterboxd. It's kind of like our version of if a tree falls in the forest. If you don't log a movie on Letterboxd, did you even watch it? So that first and only time I watched Ex Machina, it was on a laptop up in my old apartment. So seeing it again the other week was like the biggest upgrade possible to go from a 15-inch laptop to an IMAX screen. I don't think it was remastered or reformatted for IMAX or anything like that, but it was great to see all the detail of the sets and the performances on the big screen. It's very cool. We'll need to discuss this a bit more in today's episode, but I think this is still Garland's best work. It's such a tight story, and that central idea of the smugness and the greediness of big tech companies basically trying to play God and own the power of AI is more relevant now than ever. It's a smart movie. It offers a really dark warning to anyone who doubts or lets their guard down to the power that AI can wield. If somehow you haven't seen this movie and you enjoy the intersection of science fiction and horror, I would definitely recommend checking out Ex Machina, which is currently available to stream on Max.
So interesting. I had no idea that your first viewing was on a laptop.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the movie more than the first time you saw it?
I remember really liking it a lot the first time I saw it. And I would say I was a little nervous for how it was going to hold up watching it like 10 years later. But yeah, it's just as good or better than I remember. It holds up really well.
Great.
I also watched How to Have Sex. kind of weird movie title. That's what it's called, by Molly Manning Walker, and it came out last year, 2023. The logline for this one reads, 3 British teenage girls go on a rites of passage holiday, drinking, clubbing, and hooking up in what should be the best summer of their lives. So I had actually been hearing some buzz around this one during the festival circuit last year, and I've been trying to find it for a while because I'd heard some good things. This is the debut from Manning Walker. She's a young British filmmaker, and I thought it was a really confident, memorable first movie from her. I'd say this is like if Spring Breakers was actually a real, true-to-life depiction of what a summer holiday trip in the UK is like for high schoolers. And like the title mentions, it mainly deals with issues of sexual consent during this party trip. I didn't even know this was a thing in the UK, to be honest. The girls in this movie are 16 years old. And for Americans, the closest comparison I can make to the atmosphere in the movie, which takes place on an island in Greece, is like a college spring break trip to somewhere in Florida. So it's, super cheap booze, cheap motels, loud music, basically no sleeping. It's a 24/7 party. I think the gross part is that it's like, instead of people around American drinking age, they're like 15 or 16 years old. It's pretty weird.
Mm-hmm.
This is a feel-bad coming-of-age film that pretty authentically captures that feeling of being at a party and everyone's having a great time, but you feel really alone and you just want to leave. There's some really good writing in here, and the best thing the movie does is capture the emotion of the whole experience for the main character. The main actor, Mia McKenna-Bruce, gives an amazing performance as Tara, and I'm looking forward to what else she does next. It can be difficult to watch at times, but if it sounds like something you might be interested in, I'd recommend giving How to Have Sex a shot. It's currently available to stream on Mubi with a free trial. How about you, Cody? What have you seen lately?
Yeah, recently I went out to see Monkey Man.
Nice.
Directed by Dev Patel. This came out just a couple weeks ago, and the logline reads, an anonymous young man unleashes a campaign of vengeance against the corrupt leaders who destroyed his life and systematically victimized the poor and powerless in Western India.
Ooh.
So, Monkey Man is actor and now writer-director Dev Patel's directorial debut.
Cool.
It was a huge challenge for him to make this film. It was nearly shut down because of the pandemic, and then later, after it was made, it was almost shelved by Netflix, possibly in part because of its political commentary about India. And India is a huge market for Netflix, I guess. And then at some point, Jordan Peele saw the film and helped push a theatrical release via Universal Pictures.
Oh, cool.
This challenge to make it was totally worth it because this is such an intense and fun, but admittedly brutal debut for Patel, who brought so much weight and flair to what could have been just another John Wick knockoff. It was even described as like Indian John Wick, and I think that does it a disservice. This is a relatively straightforward revenge plot, and, its second act sags a bit, but its cultural spectacle and its ruthless choreography really bring in elements of some of our favorites like Old Boy, The Raid, Fist of Fury, Bourne Ultimatum, and so many awesome movies that clearly inspired Patel to make this. Do beware of its hard R violence and prominent shaky cam if you're particularly sensitive to that.
Ooh, Mark.
But that rough and ready movement of the camera feels like it's just trying to keep up with everything going on with the choreography, and for me that just adds to its spontaneous and chaotic feel. I recommend seeing Monkey Man in theaters if you can, so go check it out if you like an intense revenge thriller.
Cool. I definitely want to see this.
Yeah, I was on the fence of whether to see it in theaters or streaming, but it sounds like you're pushing a theatrical experience.
He's pushing us there.
I'm pushing you. I think it's one of those experiences where, like, if you're gonna like or love the movie, it's just gonna make it that much better seeing it on a big screen, sound kind of blaring in your face, and it just adds to that intensity.
Cool.
After hearing about how hard it was to make and to get that theatrical release, I feel like I kind of owe it.
Yeah.
The only thing that was like holding me back was like the shaky cam. I was like, how much are we talking?
A lot.
There's a decent amount.
BlackBerry.
Oh, fuck.
It's definitely not like that. It's just kind of during the fight sequences, it's like there's a guy like ducked in a corner, handheld, like trying to follow it just feels very like crazy.
I feel like that gave me like a really good illustration of it.
Anyway. And then next up, I saw a documentary that came out last year, 2023, called David Holmes, The Boy Who Lived, directed by Dan Hartley. The logline reads, when stunt double David Holmes becomes paralyzed while filming the penultimate Harry Potter movie, his career came to an end, but his inextricable bond with actor Daniel Radcliffe and his fellow crew members endures. So this doc accomplishes a couple things. I think on a more surface level, it's a great retelling of the events surrounding David Holmes' life-changing accident while testing a wire rigging stunt on Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which I don't know if you guys heard about this story back in the day. I didn't.
I didn't. I remember seeing headlines, but not like really the details of it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a story that like everyone should learn about, especially if you have a love for the Harry Potter series or, you know, the process of filmmaking as a whole. The doc culminates in what becomes a deeper examination of stunt work in the film industry and the ethics behind that work. How you're essentially paid to take on the risk of bodily harm, but also how that risk can be mitigated with more thorough safety standards, which we should always be looking to improve. And then even deeper still with the doc, David Holmes's relationships and mental and physical health are explored deeply, fluctuating in tone between existential dread and this unbreakable hope he has at the same time. And, you know, the actual narrative form of the film, it's not going to blow anyone away, but the honest conversations and complicated emotions that come with it make this a must-watch for those wanting to learn more about David's story. I think you really get a sense of that fragility of life and the resilience that this man had when his life was changed forever as a result of this accident. So that's David Holmes, The Boy Who Lived, which you can stream on Max or buy digitally.
Wow. Holy shit.
Yeah. Well, on that bright note, let's, I guess, dive into our discussion about Civil War, directed by Alex Garland and starring Kirsten Dunst, Kaylee Spaney, Wagner Moura, and Stephen McKinley Henderson, among many others.
19 states have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
Are you guys aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America?
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
The logline for the film reads, set in a dystopian future America, a team of military-embedded journalists raced against time to reach D.C. before rebel factions descend upon the White House. And let's start off with you, Mark. Spoiler-free section. What did you think of Civil War?
So I'll start off by saying, as you guys know, that this was my most anticipated movie of the year. And that gives you an idea of the level of expectation that I had going into this. I'm a huge fan of Alex Garland, with Ex Machina being one of my favorite films of the past decade, as you had mentioned, Connor. And I was completely blown away by his TV show Devs. And so that's why I am happy to say that I absolutely loved Civil War.
Woohoo.
I thought it was a masterpiece, and it made me double down on Alex Garland being one of my favorite directors working today. Prior to seeing this film, I think it helped that I read that the movie was focused a little bit more on the photojournalism rather than diving into the specifics and politics surrounding the start of the Civil War itself. And to me, this is a feature and not a bug. And what I'm about to say, I'm really kind of just speaking for myself, but me personally, I'm not really interested in seeing a movie devote its runtime to explaining how this version of the United States devolved into the dystopia seen on screen. At this point, I'm just kind of tired of the incessant finger pointing at one side or another. And I think this movie, what it does do is it makes clear that the state of the country seen in the film is the result of growing factions unwilling to listen to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are some parallels to today in that matter.
Yep.
And that's why I think it was kind of smart that Garland decided to sidestep some of this messiness and instead focus on its characters, which I found to be one of the best parts of the film.
Yeah.
This film highlights the importance of journalism and the psychological and physical toll that it can take on those involved in the profession. We follow a group of characters that are in different stages of their journalism careers, which allows the audience to experience the desensitization and resultant numbness from covering the horrific acts of war. And the brutal imagery depicted on the action sequences, if you want to call them that, is terrifying, but it has a purpose, which is to make you feel uncomfortable. There's no glorification of war here. And yet there is a certain momentum to the narrative that never left me completely repulsed or bored, for that matter. There's a baseline level of tension from the very opening of the film that spikes during specific sequences, including the one we're covering today, but it never reaches zero throughout its entire runtime. I found Civil War to be a harsh, cautionary tale that uses all spectacle that it has up its sleeves to amplify its anti-war message. The overall experience left me a little shook up, but I had a newfound respect and appreciation for those reporting on the front lines. This film feels urgent and essential for today's society. I obviously thought it was amazing. Connor, I'm dying to hear, what did you think?
I really liked Civil War. I wouldn't say I completely loved it like you, but I think it was a great return to form for Garland after he had kind of a weird misfire with Men. I agree. I'm a huge fan of him myself, and that's the only one in his library that I'm not super hot on. I really agree with you that reading how the movie focused on following the press and covering the journalism and documentation of war, rather than focusing on the war itself, really helped me go into the film with the right frame of mind. We're used to seeing these images and the content of war in other parts of the world that we're several steps removed from here in the US, so it evokes a pretty visceral reaction when that context is now switched to be our home country. Seeing Washington, D.C. under siege, seeing military vehicles driving down back roads in West Virginia, it's all scarily real and an effective way to show what it might really be like if a civil war broke out in the US. What the movie did really well for me was show the human side of war on all sides. We see these really magical moments of our characters being present and honestly just being normal people despite what's happening around them, staying up late at night, having conversations, soaking in the simple beauty of a flower while they're ducking for cover as a sniper shoots at them, joking around while driving down a treacherous stretch of road. But then some really stark reminders and details of life during wartime on the other end, like one person torturing another person he went to high school with because he stole from his gas station. One of our main characters constantly drinking alcohol to numb himself to the reality of what's happening around him. All of those human moments make it feel so real. Journalism is a job for our main characters, and as much as they try to compartmentalize and go into work mode when they're documenting the war, the things they see for the sake of reporting live with them forever, and they can't control when that trauma will pop back up. I heard Alex Garland mention in an interview that Come and See was an inspiration for this movie because of its strong anti-war message, and I could definitely see that. That movie is incredible, one of the most powerful movies I've ever seen. And it takes a similar approach where it focuses on the human toll of war. It's all very real and immediate. You're totally immersed in the chaos and horror of war in that movie. I think Civil War takes a different route by following the people documenting the war versus fighting in the war, but still arrives at a very timely and effective anti-war message. So I really liked it and thought it was effective in that way. What about you, Cody?
Yeah, this was also one of my most anticipated films of the year too. I was equally impressed, particularly by the actual filmmaking technique employed by all disciplines of the production here. I thought my ears and chest were going to cave in the theatrical experience from that insane sound design and mix by Glenn Fremantle and his team. It was so impactful, literally. And then we had editor Jake Roberts knock this out of the park with unbelievable action cutting and probably one of the most beautiful mid-film montages I've ever seen. Cinematography, stunts, special effects, VFX, and of course direction by Alex Garland. I just think every single department fired on all cylinders here. And then going back to the political perspective, listen, I totally understand criticisms of the film, calling out a lack of stance from Garland. I just don't agree with that criticism. One, because as you were kind of saying, Mark and Connor, this is the film we got. Like, this is what he chose to do from the POV of journalism. And people are kind of wishing for something that just isn't there instead of critiquing the film that is there, I think. Maybe that's like a bit of a cop-out on my part, but I don't agree with that criticism. And I just think this is an interesting ethical dilemma. Like, should Garland use that charged, brutal imagery of an alt version of America and not deliver like a scathing condemnation of our real-life tyrant trying to con his way back into the White House? Many would argue no, it's not responsible to do that, but I just think his vision of this alt future is actually pretty scathing from my perspective. I guess I'm just not sure what people wanted out of this experience. Like, did they want a wigged Alec Baldwin doing his Trump impression instead of Nick Offerman's version of a fascist? I just feel like it could get too heavy-handed too quickly.
Yeah.
And this film approached it in a bit more of a subtle, light-handed way. I was totally fine with that because you can kind of glean what is happening with the government, like this man in his third term of office,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there are a lot of scared people in this country, a lot of nervous people for November,
right?
All across the world too. I'm included in that. And I think it's important to use your platform if you have one to speak out. But I really think you guys are both right. I agree that this film takes an observational POV instead of a, left or right spectrum POV. And yet I really don't think it pulls any punches while acting as an analog to our real world. Anyway, huge fan of the film. Let's get into our scene selection, which we're going to call What Kind of American Are You? And as usual, beware of spoilers ahead.
Is there anyone there?
Yes, what do you see?
Spoilers! Right ahead!
Thank you.
Connor, would you like to give us the scene beats, please?
Sure, I would love to. This scene takes place an hour into the film and it lasts for about 10 minutes. Young, aspiring photojournalist Jesse, played by Kaylee Spaney, and fellow press member Bohe, played by Evan Lai, are taken captive by a small group of nationalist soldiers who are seen burying dozens of bodies in a mass grave. Observing from afar, journalists played by Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Stephen McKinley Henderson, and Nelson Lee debate helping their colleagues. Sammy, played by Henderson, stays behind while the others confront the soldiers. One of the soldiers, played by Jesse Plemons, interrogates the group at gunpoint before killing Bohe and then Tony. Sammy comes to the rescue at the last moment, plowing through the soldiers with the press truck, but knocks young Jesse into the mass grave. She is pulled out and the group narrowly escapes, but quickly realizes that Sammy has been fatally wounded in the getaway.
So a movie with some of the best kind of militaristic action, choreography, firefighting, why did you guys want to choose this scene?
In a movie that has a tremendous amount of action, this one does not actually have that much, but I'd say it's arguably one of the most tense scenes in the movie. And I think it's also Jessie's true first near-death experience, where she discovers the dangers of war photojournalism firsthand.
Yeah.
I think also, in a movie called Civil War, this is a pretty loaded name of this scene. Like, what kind of American are you? That's like this is kind of a pivotal moment where we're seeing that dividing line of who's acceptable as an American and who isn't. And they make that pretty clear in this scene by Jesse Plemons' character interrogating each character and asking what kind of American they are. Where are you from? And we see his reaction to when people mention states like Missouri, Colorado, or when people mention other countries like China, like that gets them killed.
Yeah, it's not enough to be just American.
Right.
And the fact that like in the society we are living in right now, in the real world, not in the film world, how somebody can ask a similar question and be extremely bigoted, maybe like refuse someone's service, which is terrible enough.
Yeah.
But the fact that this scene outlines, like, in the setting of war, that could be the difference between life and death.
Yeah, totally. And I think it, also addresses underlying sentiments of racism with Plemons' character, like carefully choosing who to execute based on what type of American they are.
Yeah, I think this scene is a great example of what we were talking about, how if you're looking for sides here in this film, it's clear that this ultra-nationalist soldier represents like a certain side of our reality, and without needing to like have a character turn to camera and look down the barrel of the lens and say like ultra-nationalism is bad,
right.
This is a very effective way to do that.
Yeah. This was also one of the main scenes used to promote the film in a lot of trailers and promoted social media ads. I don't know about you guys, but it was all over my feed. Yeah. I think the cool part of the scene is the reason that we wanted to cover it today. It still managed to be super surprising and, like you said, Mark, very tense, despite us having seen Plemons deliver that, what kind of American are you line a bunch of times already in the trailers. There was a lot more to the scene that we hadn't seen yet.
Yeah, so I think we should probably start off by saying that this is an A24 production, and it's also apparently the biggest budget movie that they've ever released, with an estimated cost of $50 million.
Wow.
Do you guys feel like they used that budget to its full extent?
Yeah, I think it absolutely shows on screen.
Yeah.
I think before we go like further into the scene, I just wanted to kind of get one thing out of the way and just ask you, Connor, point blank.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about the logo and the text?
Yeah.
Or typography for Civil War?
Yeah, sure. So the movie poster uses a typeface called ITC Avant-Garde Gothic, and it's designed by famous typographer and designer Herb Lubalin and Tom Carnass. So that's what Civil War is typeset in on the posters. It's a 1970s typeface, and it usually evokes kind of a mid-century vibe, but it's a pretty timeless and modernist typeface with how geometric those letter forms are. The C is almost a perfect circle. The angular letters are very sharp and pointy. So already you're getting some tension just in the way those shapes kind of feel at odds with each other within the same word. It was used in a lot of album covers and like science fiction paperbacks and novels in the 70s and 80s. So to me, it feels pretty appropriate for something that's supposed to be like familiar in an American sense, but still kind of futuristic and ominous at the same time. And I don't know if either of you noticed, but when the poster first came out late last year, they used avant-garde Gothic straight up in like a metallic gradient. But in the last few months, they actually flipped that color to be bright green. And they started to use this alternate A glyph where it's like slanted to the right. And it almost feels like the A is like running away from the rest of the word. And I definitely think that's intentional, since the font actually, it comes with these glyphs that fit really neatly together. So there's actually an alternate W that's like perfectly slanted to fit that slanted A, and they chose not to use it. So that makes me think those letters are pushing apart from each other to represent the two sides of the Civil War in America.
Yeah, A for America.
Yeah, and conceptually, I also just really like the whole marketing from A24 and the use of the green army men figures of the main characters. I feel like it's like a good way to promote the film. So I like what they're doing from an art standpoint for the film.
Yeah, I think that really ties in nicely, Connor, because by choosing to have these characters as those army men figures,
right,
it shows that they're part of the war, even though they may not be soldiers. So in this movie, I really felt the vulnerability of the journalists in this film. They literally have no means of defense against all these people with assault rifles, handguns, bombs, etc. Everything that they could have. And this particular scene we're talking about today starts with Lee, played by Kirsten Dunst, using her telephoto lens to zoom in and see what kind of trouble Jesse's in. And I thought that was just such a super smart way to use her only weapon, so to speak, and also provide the audience with this kind of voyeuristic shot of the action from a safe distance. Plemons and the other armed men are in army camouflage uniforms.
Yeah.
So they give the impression that they're legitimate officials, but we don't really have an understanding whether they're government appointed, whether they're kind of doing their own thing. I think just by seeing the number of dead bodies in the scene, you wouldn't think that they were government appointed, but it's not very clear.
Clearly they're doing something bad here. Like they're kind of doing it hidden away behind a house, like it's off the main road. And they're trying not to be seen basically with what they're doing. Like I was kind of presuming it as like they were killing any witnesses that saw them do whatever they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the brilliant choice, and if it was costume department, props, I don't know, those cherry red sunglasses that Clemens wears, it's just such an amazing choice for the character. It kind of creates an inconsistency and like an unreliable character where it's like, to your point, Mark, they're in these military fatigues. They seem official, on one side or another. They don't really know yet. But when he's wearing these goofy glasses, it kind of makes you think like, oh, maybe they are not taking the rules of engagement seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They gave me Elton John vibes a little bit.
You can't get an accurate read on this character. The glasses insinuate that he may have a goofy side to him, but then he's got this assault rifle and that tells a different story. So there are these conflicting details. And much like the characters in the film, you don't know his temperament or how he's going to react at any given time.
Yeah.
And I think going back to the official nature of these characters, one thing that we do see at the start of the scene is Clemens' character smoking a cigarette, and he's sprinkling what I would presume is lye on the pit of bodies.
Ugh.
And something tells me that's probably not government protocol to do something like that. But there's a literal dump truck that starts to slowly dispose of these corpses, and the front side of the back of the truck appears to have scratch marks on it, which I thought was a truly horrific detail that they decided to include.
Jeez.
And then to make matters worse, one of the corpses actually gets caught and won't slide down. And I thought that was just another sickening detail.
How do you guys think they accomplished that effect? Those had to have been prop bodies.
I was wondering that too.
I went back and forth.
I don't know. Like, are they stunt people?
I mean, it looks so real.
I thought they might have been stunt people personally.
It's like those little details that just make it that much more impactful. Like the fact that corpse this leg gets caught and doesn't want to move. It's like that sticks with you.
Right. Because like maybe that would actually happen. I don't know, obviously. But, the fact that they chose to do that and it doesn't go all smoothly just does create that realistic feel. But while we're on the topic of costume choices and production design, I also want to make mention that Jessie, one of the reasons she finds herself in trouble is that she doesn't have any identification that she's with press.
Oh, right.
And she's in this white t-shirt, which I think was a choice to kind of show her innocence and kind of like a blank slate compared to the rest of the group of journalists. Did you guys pick up on that?
I didn't, but that's a great pickup. I think that's really smart symbolism in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there's something that feels super tense about this entire scene, and I think it's how real it feels. It's almost like time really slows down during this scene. We're almost in real time in terms of what's actually happening played out. And I read that they shot this scene for 2 days straight, so they put a lot of work into it, and they wanted to capture that intensity. So instead of trying to get close-ups of reactions of everybody, they almost shot it in a non-traditional way to make sure that the momentum wasn't getting lost. They wanted to have those shots smoothly transition from one to another, and that really made it feel immersive from an audience standpoint.
Yeah, I think there was very clear intentionality for the cinematography in the scene and how they actually shot this. The very first shot of the scene shows their press truck coming slowly into frame, and camera begins to crane downward to reveal the other press car, the Toyota SUV that Jessie leapt into, with both front doors wide open. Like, you just get the immediate gut feeling something has gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Super ominous, unnatural thing to see.
Definitely.
The way in which they choose to film this scene in broad daylight, it's that feeling of like something gruesome and horrifying happening in front of your eyes. It could have taken place in the middle of the night, and yet we're not going to get a lot of that detail to make the scene so effective. I thought that choice was brilliant, just to have it like a nice, normal, sunny day, and this horrible, horrible thing is happening.
Right.
I think it also speaks to just how comfortable Jesse Plemons and his crew are with like carrying out this kind of task, whatever they're doing, like burying all these bodies in a mass grave in broad daylight. Like it shows how desensitized everything is and out in the open it is right now.
And as an audience, we can't hide behind the safety of it taking place at night, where we can't see the details of like the scratch marks or the number of bodies in the pit.
Oof. And then when we see Joel first approach, he addresses Plemons in almost like a friendly and relaxed manner, which juxtaposes with a really slow crane shot that we actually get that big reveal of this giant open grave of bodies. We hadn't really seen that before, so it's just a super upsetting and disturbing way to show what these characters are walking into.
I think there's one other shot that I would like to kind of call out in this, which is of Jesse crawling across the corpses as she narrowly escapes death from the hands of Plemons, and after getting hit by that car. It's one of those shots that just stays with you long after the movie's over. And once again, there's a lot of stuff that's not really spelled out in the movie, but if you kind of pay attention to some of the details, they're there. And in this particular shot, if you look at the nationality of the corpses in the pit, you'll notice that a lot of them are from diverse backgrounds, which once again gives us a little bit of background and information about Jesse Plemons and his group of soldiers, so to speak.
Yeah, chilling.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Plemons, I mean, he's only in the film for this short scene. It's an astonishing performance that very drastically switches between relaxed, calm, and then like high level of intensity.
Yeah, he does a ton in terms of being like a menacing highlight of this movie from a performance standpoint, from a writing standpoint. Plemons is just a go-to for this type of character. He portrays an unpredictable psychopath so well. This reminds me of his performance of, for Breaking Bad fans, Todd. He injects this feeling of unease and unpredictability through this whole scene. He's got his hand on the trigger. I felt my heart racing every time he would like raise and lower that AR-15 in his hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also interesting to know that Plemons was actually not originally cast in this role.
Oh, wow.
So Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons are married in real life. And I think Jesse was in Georgia to look after their kids while Kirsten was filming. And the actor who was supposed to play this part dropped out.
Wow.
And so Kirsten recommended that Jesse kind of do this as a favor because, anybody who's seen the movie, this is not really a role that people are going to seek out or want to do per se.
Right.
But Connor, to mirror your point, he is so good at that level of unpredictability. And it did remind me of the character he played. I think he was a cop. Yeah, he was a cop and he was the neighbor in Game Night.
Yes.
And once again, he's just so good at playing this type of character. We always quote that one thing: how can that be profitable for Frito-Lay? The 3-for-1 deal.
I actually just saw that clip this morning. It's so amazing. And his range is like incredible, and he can do so much with that type of character.
I also read that Wagner Moura, who plays Joel in the movie, felt a personal attachment to this scene with him being of Brazilian descent. And so this scene obviously deals with levels of racism. And so when he was shooting the scene, he was quoted as saying it was very personal for him with the feelings of anti-immigration, xenophobia. He said it took him several days to kind of recover from this. And I could completely understand why.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, we have Sammy, played by Stephen McKinley Henderson. And he sort of serves as an audience surrogate. He says at the beginning of the scene, if we go down there, they are going to kill us.
Mm-hmm.
And, every instinct in me is telling me this is death. Like, he is the one person saying, like, despite them, wanting and needing to help out their colleagues, he knows it in his gut from years of experience. And I think that's a really reasonable thing to think.
Oh, yeah.
When you see a group of people just nonchalantly dumping bodies into a mass grave. Like, that would probably be your instinct.
Stephen McKinley Henderson is so good in this movie. I think he actually might have been my favorite performance of the whole film. And that's like saying a lot because incredible performances from every single actor in this movie.
Yeah.
But this scene kind of starts with a few moments of unexpected comedy, which got a few laughs from the audience in our screening, especially before we knew what was going to happen. So Kirsten Dunst says to Stephen's character, "You stay because you're old and you can't run," which got a good laugh right before things really started to go down.
Yeah. And it's a great callback to the beginning of the film as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Plemons also, when he starts talking to Joel, he said, "What's in Charlottesville?" And Joel says something along the lines of, "Good hiking, I hear."
Yeah, right. It's like a ballsy thing to say.
Yeah. He really tries to take this kind of friendly approach with Plemons at first, just because he's obviously trying to rescue Jesse. And instead of antagonizing him, he wants to befriend him. And as the audience, you kind of know this may not work and it may completely backfire. But it is interesting that they inject these little comedic beats because it just adds to that unevenness in the tone, which is obviously purposeful in the scene. And it really helps add that tension.
Yeah. And Joel, we kind of see him feel his way through how to connect and read Jesse Plemons' character. So he talks about a college reopening in Charlottesville and says, it's a surreal, feel-good story. I guess we all need that, right? Like he's trying to connect on a human level with Jesse Plemons' character. And we see the camera cut to Jesse and the other journalists looking at Plemons. It's just such a tense moment and also kind of a turning point because they're essentially looking to his response as an indirect way of whether he's going to either let them go or shoot them. And then, of course, we see him smile and agree before shooting one of the journalists.
Right. Yeah. So he kind of does both. You know?
I know.
At this point, we know that all of our fears as an audience are real.
And we get that kind of famous exchange now. So we're American journalists. You already told me that. We work for Reuters. Reuters doesn't sound American. It's a news agency. I know what Reuters is. It's like he's, just messing with them a little bit.
And that leads us to the quote that we used for the name of this scene. Joel tries to say that we are American. And that's where Plemons' character says, "Okay, well, what kind of American are you?" And then when he addresses Joel, he's like, "Are you Central American, South American?"
Right.
And I think it's at this point that all bets are off.
Yep.
Yeah. And it kind of works on multiple levels because on one hand, I should say an American state. So the dude thinks, I'm from here and he won't shoot me. But then it's like, which state do you say? Because we're in the middle of a war where Florida, Texas, and California are aligned. If this is an ultra-nationalist, far-right, trigger-happy soldier, is saying Florida actually the right move because he's probably not a part of the Western forces, but he seemed okay with that. So it's interesting.
Yeah, because I think Plemons was probably part of what some of the promotional images for the film, they call it like the loyalist states. And so I assume that Plemons was from that because he liked the answers of Missouri and Colorado.
Right.
But that's just my guess.
And I think we should definitely talk a little bit about Kirsten Dunst's performance as Lee. Her character takes a little bit of a backseat in this scene, even though she's essentially like the main character of the film. And I think the reason for that is because everyone around her is so much more reactionary. Whereas like this is a really, really horrible situation, but she's encountered horrors before. That kind of inscrutable, tough look on her face, particularly when she's asked about where she's from, she confidently answers Colorado. She kind of knows that she's in the clear and is more worried for her colleagues.
Her performance is unlike any of the other roles that I've seen her in. She really does kind of have this hardened, flat affect. And I think it kind of coincides with the way that she shoots her images during the war, in that they're kind of straight to the point. They're honest. They're a little bit blunt. And that's kind of the way she talks in the movie. That's the way she looks.
Yeah.
So it all kind of checks out.
I think another thing that really adds to the overall tension of the scene, outside of obviously the writing, the conversation that's happening, is there's no musical accompaniment for a majority of this scene. Instead, we just have that natural sound and the dialogue, which I think is a super smart choice. Placing any kind of music here would just draw attention away from this mounting tension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it's until they get into the getaway car that there's like this light score in the background that it kind of sounds like a guitar feedback and this distorted droning note that kind of swallows up that natural sound. And that's actually where we get a shot of Jesse screaming in the car. And then they cut to Joel and he does the same thing. So instead of hearing that natural sound, that's when the score kind of takes over. I thought that was just such an effective way of using... That was a really
powerful shot, yeah.
Yeah, using sound and music to really tell a story.
Mm-hmm. On a quick side note, I really love Alex Garland and like Ben Salisbury's musical choices in a lot of their films. They lean very like guitar heavy. So that was something that felt like it was pulling through almost like the American folk and rock and roll sound through, but using it in this like kind of menacing, like drumming up tension way throughout the entire film.
And then going back to like overall sound design, sound mixing. This scene is a great microcosm of the film as a whole, because what we're hearing throughout is like a great exercise in contrast between silence and peaking sound. Yeah. The loudest sounds that you can think of, like gunfire, explosions. And this scene practices that so well because no score, as you guys mentioned. You have kind of the calming atmosphere of a rural setting, and then all of a sudden like these two loud cracks of gunfire, and that's found throughout the whole film.
Yeah, I would even say during some of the more action heavy scenes with all the gunfire that occurs, even during that, when there wasn't silence, it was just so loud that you couldn't ignore the weight of every single one of those bullets. They all kind of are felt. I think that was just another way of kind of hammering home that anti-war message.
Yeah, the crack of that shot during the sniper standoff scene in particular made me like jump out of my seat a little bit. I knew it was coming, but it still really got me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, whether it is sound design, choices in the visual language of the film, all of these elements are working so well together, both in tandem with each other, but also in contrast, creating this sense of tension and dread. All of these filmmaking techniques that they've employed make this such a vibrant, stylistic film, if nothing else. So I think, we can enjoy it for that reason alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does show all these different crafts coming together. And when we talk about Alex Garland in particular, he's a very detail-oriented person, and he takes some pretty ambitious ideas and puts them to screen in a way that is super memorable. And I don't think Civil War strays too far away from that. I think it's a masterpiece for the reasons we've mentioned here, and I think it's absolutely worth watching in a theater. So please check it out.
Well, thank you both, as always, for your thoughts on the scene and the film. And a big thank you to our listeners and fellow movie enthusiasts for reliving this scene with us. Do you have a favorite scene from Civil War? You can email us at contact@Scenecraft Podcast with any of your thoughts or comments, or follow us on Instagram, X, TikTok, and Threads @Scenecraft Podcast for any scheduling updates and news. You can support the podcast by leaving us a review or star rating on your platform of choice. If you have not already, we would truly appreciate that. And then a very special thanks to Jordan Summerlad for our theme music. This has been Scenecraft, where we break down the craft behind our favorite scenes. See you all next time.